My name is Hugh. I'm proud to say that I have been and always shall be Tim Dobbing's friend. Tim and I have known each other for a very long time. The majority of my life and his too. And this is very painful for me to do, and I hope I can keep it together long enough to tell you how good it has been having him in my life all these years. I don't really know where to start, so I'll start at the beginning. Tim and I met 50 years ago next Saturday on October the 5th, 1969. I know because it was my 13th birthday. It's 50 years. And not too many relationships that any of us will ever be in our lives that will last that long. I've tried several times to express my feelings since learning of his passing, and all I can think of is how much he influenced my life in so many ways, many of which I didn't even realize until I really started this process. When we met, I know exactly where it was. It was at the end of the driveway as my parents and my sister and I were going to move into our new home. We hadn't even stepped on the property yet, and Tim walked by on the street. He stopped and he said, "Are you moving in here?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And he said, "See you around." That was a momentous day. I'm glad it happened. We connected in so many ways, and right from the beginning. As I said, I never realized how much influence he had on so many things that became favorites in my life. Over at his place all the time, his mom would make roast beef sandwiches for us, and I learned to like hot mustard, something I enjoy very much even now. Innocuous, but still an important part of my life. He tried many times to teach me how to play the guitar. I now pluck away at the ukulele, but the guitar still is something out there that I want to pick up again one day. And I always think of Tim when I do. He took me skiing for the first time, and that became a lifelong passion. I became a level 2 instructor, and I taught downhill at many of the ski resorts around the Ottawa area. I was an on-hill first aid and rescue instructor for the ski patrol for 13 years, all because Tim took me skiing and introduced me to a sport that became an incredible passion, and that I expect to be doing till the end of my days. He introduced me to Jimi Hendrix, Black Sabbath, Eric Clapton. How could you say no to that? We listened to the Beatles so often, I thought the records were going to wear out. And I bet those originals are still in his record collection at his house now. We went to the same high school. We started off in grade 9 at Sir Robert Borden here in Ottawa. And if you wish, I have pictures of him in grade 9. I hope that they are visible. This is Tim, very clean shaven, in grade 9. And you can see him again right here in grade 10. Not much different, just a little bit bigger. Here he is in the high school band, the orchestra, senior chamber orchestra. Tim played string bass. Later on, as he was old enough to drive, Tim used to borrow his dad's Mini Cooper S in British Racing Green with a sunroof. And he would drive to school with his string bass. And it was quite amusing to see people on the sidewalk, they see him come out of the school, and he'd walk up to this Mini. This is one of the original Minis, not the new ones. He'd walk up to this Mini with this humongous string bass, and he'd open the door, and he'd just scoop it in like this and up out the sunroof in the passenger seat or in the back seat. He'd pull the seat forward. And as he walked around, he'd close the door and he'd walk around, and as he opened his door to get in, he'd just go to them like that and start laughing and get in the car and drive off. And every time I saw him do that, it was always new. It was always fresh. He loved driving. He was pretty good at it too. And I don't say that to many people. He knew how to drive a Standard really well. And to be able to drive an old Mini Cooper S like that, 1969 I think it was, the model. And what can I say? You know, it's a classic experience that I got to share with him. Every weekend he'd be taking off in the car instead of sitting at home. He'd drive off often up to Algonquin Park. He developed a very strong passion for being outdoors. He'd go up to a place called Tea Lake. He'd always stay at the same campsite, and he'd go there and stay for the weekend and drive back. And I'm glad to say that I got to share that experience with him many times as well. We'd sit around the campfire and just relax, very often not even talk, and just enjoy each other's company immensely. His passion for being outdoors grew incredibly after he got out west. And he and with Maria as well would go camping and hiking and whatever quite often. And as his love for photography grew along with that, he would spend many hours in the outdoors, as you know. Tim didn't have a lot of friends that I'm aware of, but he also never had anybody that disliked him that I know of either. His family, sadly, all passed before him, other than his distant family in England, his brother, his mom and dad. And I don't know anyone else who may be there today with you, other than you, his friends, and Maria and her family, who I know he loved very much, to share in celebrating this life of his. Tim was amazing in so many ways. He was very quiet. He wasn't muscular, but he was extremely strong. He demonstrated that once at high school when Lynn Gregor, another guy in school, was bugging the heck out of Tim. And I'd never seen Tim lose his cool. And one day he just turned around, and in one swoop, he just reached around and grabbed Lynn Gregor by the throat, and he had him pinned up against the lockers, and Lynn's feet were hanging probably 2 feet off the ground. And Tim was doing it with his left hand. It was just, Lynn never touched him again after that. And we often laughed and joked about that memory. It was just looking at the shock on Lynn's face was worth every moment. Speaking of Tim is like speaking about me. So many of the things that I did when I grew up that I still cherish. He introduced me to Get Smart. We used to watch Star Trek together. We went to every James Bond movie as they came out, original first time release in the movie theaters. It was just unspoken. A movie came out, we went to see it. Even the bad ones. I still remember them all, and every time I watch any one of them now, I still remember going to see them with Tim, enjoying those evenings together. When we first started, we were younger, we used to get into a lot of the English things because his heritage was English. I was over from England not too many years before. And we used to talk and joke about the English shows like Thunderbirds and XL5 and Stingray, Joe 90. And most of the kids over here never even knew what they were. We'd eat Caramax and Macintosh toffee, which at the time were also not very common. All in all, most of my life has been influenced by having him in it. It's something I'm very, very happy to say. We used to go out on our birthdays, and we would take it in turns. If it was my birthday, Tim would take me out and he would foot the bill. And if it was his birthday, it was the other way around. The person whose birthday it was went wherever they were taken, but the rule was you could have whatever you wanted. We would go to restaurants, and one night, I think we spent more than $800 between the two of us. You could go in and you could have literally whatever you wanted. We would go in and we would order, always, we'd start off with a double Black Russian. That was our tradition, that was our drink. I don't think I've ever had a Black Russian without thinking of him. We would go maybe one place for appetizers, the next place for maybe another appetizer or a main course, and then perhaps another place for another main course. One night, I think we had 3 entrees each, 2 appetizers, and a couple of desserts. Then we went, this was after we'd already had a couple of Black Russians, so then we went to go to another place, another bar, and we had a couple more drinks and another dessert, bottle of wine. I think that was the night we spent $800 and some between the two of us. That's something I've never known anybody else do, and it's such an incredible way to remember him. We're just enjoying the food and the company of each other for the whole evening with no holds barred. I miss those times very much. Tim, I miss you incredibly. I mourn you. And it's been 3 weeks, and still I find it hard to keep it together when I think about you and talk about you. But today, we are here to celebrate having you in our life, for changing our lives forever. Thank you. Love you, man. You always have been and always shall be.